Okay, well, today I'm here in the corner of my studio by my easel where I paint all my paintings, and we thought it might be a bit different to record a little video and answer some of big questions. Let's hope there's some questions that you've had and they're not too boring. My answers aren't too boring. Okay, what's new in this show? Emphasis on this. So obviously, every time I produce a show, I have new work, and that's all new. But I think really we're looking for sort of what's different about these paintings as opposed to maybe a previous show. And I think art or sort of painting for me is a constant evolution. This year's paintings look different from last and so on. They're always growing and changing and adapting. And I think maybe what we're beginning to see in this season's paintings is the transformation of the backgrounds to some degree. I think it started off a year or so ago when I began to put little sort of bars and bands of colours, bright colours that contrasted the painting in the top corner of the canvas. And I think that's gone on and transformed over time. And so it started off in the corner, and now sometimes it stretches across the whole canvas of the painting. And in addition to that, I'm also experimenting with some real abstraction in the backgrounds. So some of these still life paintings now have wholeheartedly abstract backgrounds, and I like unifying that with what's in the foreground and reconciling those two subjects, like the very formed and identifiable foreground elements with something more, I don't know, esoteric and whimsical in the background. Another series of paintings in this show that's probably new would be the landscape paintings. For a number of years now, I painted always a few landscapes, and those have slowly been growing and evolving over time, but I think that in the last year they took quite a dramatic turn. And rather than painting the whole vista, the whole landscape, I've really been sort of zeroing in on one element within that landscape. So I've become interested in sort of really just focusing in on the beauty and the aesthetic of sort of one tree or two or three trees, and finding a creative way to approach that as a subject. And there's a number of paintings in this show that feature that aesthetic, and I'm quite excited about this new look and new direction within the landscape painting, and we'll see where it goes. Okay, let's have a new question. Tell me about the lines. Well, I get asked that question an awful lot. People ask about these lines that dissect, that refract the work, that break up the still life paintings. The simple answer to this really is they're there to add interest. I paint in a very direct and simplified, iconic imagery. And the moment you take one of these lines, break a lemon in half, change the refraction of a table, it immediately elevates the painting. It creates an intellectual stimulus for the eye, if you like. It gives you something else to think about. And that for me improves the depth and resonance of the overall painting. I also think the inclusion of these dissecting lines somehow increases the longevity of the work in the sense of enjoyment. I think that without them, it doesn't have that same depth, that same resonance. And so I like to think that clients who buy my work are still enjoying that painting in years to come. And it's not just because of the sort of the compelling subject matter itself, but it's also somehow the inclusion of those lines and that extra depth gives you something to come back to in years to come. Okay, let's have a new question. What drives you artistically? Kind of difficult question to answer, but in recent times I think has got a little easier for me. I realise I'm sort of driven and compelled to produce something that's wholeheartedly mine, that's I suppose truly unique. I'm a strong believer in sort of growing the art, is sort of history art medium, to feel like you're doing something different that isn't sort of derivative or the same as someone else's. And I realize that is in the passion and core of my sort of soul. So, if you see one of my paintings for the first time, and then you see another one a few years later, and even if you can't see the signature from the far side of the room, you could still recognize my paintings. And that's really what I'm striving for. I'm striving to produce painting and produce works that are so sort of strongly distinctive that whether you love them or hate them, you're going to remember that Angus painted them. That's probably enough on that. Okay, talk about colour. Well, I think colour sort of links in with that to some degree. So a lot of people react to my work because they sort of talk about it being sort of joyful and happy and all of those things, because I use sort of strong and engaging colours. But for me, it's sort of all about power, or maybe drama is a better way to say it. I used to paint with a more sort of post-impressionist muted palette. There was a lot more cohesion in the colour, and over the years, it's sort of become stronger and more dramatic. And the reason for that is I'm always striving to paint the most impactful painting I can, and colour gets me there. So if I can create an impact with colour, a reaction with colour, then that's going to draw your eye, that's going to engage you, and hopefully that's going to give the painting some degree of sort of resonance or power or impact. Well, that's probably enough talk about colour. So, okay, yeah, I remember this one. So we're all done for now. Hopefully you enjoy looking at the new paintings in the show, and hopefully some of these questions were informative for you. And I'm going to go back to some painting now. All right.